Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Table Talk on 802 Scoop, live from 185 North Main Street in Barrie. I wasn't sure that we were going to be able to go live because I didn't have sound. We don't want to start the day that way. That's not a good way to start the day. But at least we have internet, which is far from what I can say for last week when we tried to go live with Washington County Sheriff Mark Poulin. We couldn't do it. And so he's going to be on this Thursday with us instead. But none of those difficulties. All is good. And today we are here again for episode 6 with Rick Coyne. It's hard to believe that I don't know that we're 6 episodes in, but we are. And today I think we'll start like normal. We'll start with you giving thanks to some people, doing your mentions.
Yep.
And then we'll pick up where we left off, which was kind of your recovery at your apartment.
Yep.
As it first started, but certainly not even close to the end of the recovery.
Right.
Because there's lots of in-between surgeries and all kinds of other stuff that happens.
Almost 3 years worth
of recovery.
Yeah.
So take it away.
So there's a bunch of people I want to kind of thank, and some of them I'm sure I'm going to miss. It was for those years, those 3 to 4 years when I was recovering, and people would come and visit, or just check in on me once in a while to see how I was doing. So I'd like to thank Matt Kuchar and his family, and Norm Fournier, and Maggie, Melissa, Isaac, and Zach, Polly and Eli, Mike Roos, Craig Rexford, Steve Simon, Russ Halpern, Janice Matson, Mark and Ann Moran, Kevin, Lori, Bryna, Frank, Abby, and Zoe Bailey, Brian Sr. Bailey, Shannon, Brian Jr. Bailey, and Jessica, Wolfgang and Gudrun Nutzold, Randy and Andrea Carbonell, Lance Moran, Jeff Putfam, Pia, my physical therapist, Kathy, my physical therapist, Dr. Laub, Jeffrey Tabin, who was the guy that saved my life through surgery and was a friend prior to that, Jamie Huntsman, Sharon Bisson, who was a nurse for me when I was up at Central Vermont Hospital, and I went to high school with her. Joe Siemens, Dave Valley, Gary Cohn, and Glenn Weeks are some of the people that I carried me around at work when I first started working, because I didn't really have the capacity to do the work that I was supposed to, because I was still physically and mentally not where I should have been.
Yeah.
So, so that's that list, and I want to send everybody happy, kind, and peaceful thoughts.
Good stuff. Good stuff. You certainly had a lot of people around you, but I can imagine that sometimes, even when you have all of those people, this is a course of 3 years, all of those people, that some days still feel kind of lonely.
Yeah, I mean, I spent...
Especially when you're struggling.
Yeah, I would say that at least the first maybe 11 months in the apartment, I was alone most of the time. I spent, after we talked about my, when I had to go back to the hospital because of what took place in the last session, I came back and that set me back. I lost weight. I was probably down to 135 pounds. And I would say I had a couple of major problems. One was I had to take Percocet. They gave me Percocet. I had to take 3 of those a day. That's a full Percocet. And I don't think that was helping me at all, because that would just, of course, your brain, the only way your brain can heal itself is through sleep. But that Percocet just, would knock me out. And then the brain surgeon gave me a medicine that really messed me up. it was for seizures. So I couldn't think normally. I couldn't, my brain wasn't working, and I was still in like this quicksand abyss where the pain was just excruciating, you know, hard for me to deal with. And then I would roll off the couch and go to the bathroom. My life was spent on the couch, just rolling off the couch, crawling to where I could crawl to go to the bathroom, to maybe get some snacks, and crawl back on the couch. And I didn't even watch TV. I didn't do anything like that. I was just barely surviving. I guess that would be the best way to explain it. You know, I was surviving enough to eat and go to the bathroom. I was down to the bare minimal things that you need to live and survive. And to progress a little faster, I finally started thinking, you know, I have to make the change. I have to start to do something other than this. And I said, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm getting rid of the Percocet. I'm going to stop taking Percocet.
Which is not easy, because
Not
that's
easy
a whole
to do.
game in itself.
Yeah, because of my pain, I still had all the stuff in my head, all the brackets. And I could actually take my skull, because the brackets, the bone or whatever they did in there hadn't healed together. And I could take my skull and move it like that, up and down, you know. And sleep was hard to, was hard to do. And so I decided to stop taking Percocet. I couldn't stop all of it, but I started taking a half Percocet twice a day instead of 3 Percocets a day. And that was kind of waking me up a little, but this seizure medicine that he gave me just put me in a fog. I can't even explain it. It would be like being in a dream. You're in a dream, and you know, you're dreaming, but then all of a sudden you're in another dream, and that dream makes no sense, and you know, you can't get anywhere in your dream. That's what it felt like for me, just in reality. And so what I did do was, and of course the neurosurgeon didn't know it, but after I started taking half of those Percocets, I took that seizure medicine and threw it out. Never took it again. And through a couple of weeks, I started to come out of this quicksand, I call it, or quicksand abyss a little bit. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to lay down all day long. I just can't do that anymore. I got to start making goals for myself, you know, start working to do something to get myself better. You know, I had to really dig deep to do that. So I decided I'm going to start sitting up. I'm going to sit up on the couch, not with my legs straight out. So I would scooch and get back on the couch, because I was using the whole length of the couch. And I would sit up on this with my back. And when I first started doing that, and I'm not lying, I could only do it for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and I'd be exhausted. I mean, totally exhausted. So I'd lay down, and I'd fall asleep and struggle, and I started doing that every day, more and more, sitting up. And finally I got up so I could sit up for quite a while. Then I would rest, and I would sit up. And the next thing I wanted to do was sit in the couch like a normal person would. So I'd have to grab my legs, throw them over onto the ground, and then sit, you know, try to sit like this. And of course the pain and, you know, you're dealing with all that stuff. So, and this is, you know, weeks and months. And so I got to that point where I could sit up for a couple hours, just sit up. And I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I couldn't really talk very well. And I just kept thinking of things that I have to do to get better. So then I decided that I'm not going to crawl anymore. I'm going to try to walk. I walked on my knees for a while. Instead of crawling, I would just get on my knees and shuffle. And then I did that for a while. And then I finally started to stand up. I said, now I'm going to stand up. I'm going to stand up by the couch in case I fall down. So I'd do this. and that would go through progression, through days of
Mhm.
progression. And I would eventually stand up. I'd be able to stand up, and then I would start walking. And I had my ski poles.
Yeah.
So I grabbed my ski poles, and I would start to try to walk. My goal was to walk to the kitchen, and I couldn't make it for a while. I'd fall down a little bit, or I just didn't have the strength. I'd have to go down on my knees and crawl back to the couch. And finally, I got to the point where I could make it to the kitchen with my ski poles. And my whole goal, the whole goal of all of this recovery for me was to go down those 32 stairs so I could go outside. I hadn't been outside in a long, long time. I wanted to go outside and feel the sun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm almost going to cry thinking about it. I wanted to feel the sun on myself and be outside in the grass and, you know, where I could hear the birds sing and look at the sky, you know. So that was in the back of my mind this whole time. That was my first major goal, was to get down those stairs. So through a progression, I got stronger, and I would go to the door, open the door up, and walk down one stair, then walk back. And I did that for 28 days. And I would go down 2 stairs and come back, and then rest, because it would totally wipe me out.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Well, you understand
I
because
do.
you've been there.
I've been there, and it was
Yeah.
I felt like I was on a treadmill and never going to get off.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like. I thought this
Yeah.
is the longest walk I've ever taken in my
And you
entire
can relate
freaking
to
life.
me more than a lot of people can,
It,
because
it's insane.
yeah. So I'm fighting all that pain, and you know, as we all know, we live inside of our minds. I mean, that's where our life is lived, you know. And my mind is starting to come back a little bit, you know. But I'm suffering, you know. The pain is incredible. I can't explain it. So I got to the point where I could almost get to the bottom of the stairs and walk back up, you know. So I think I got down to 20 stairs, and I said, well, you know, I can't really walk up all the way, because I'd walk up a couple stairs and then crawl. So I kept going, and finally I said, you know what, this is the day I'm going outside, and I don't care if I can make it up those stairs. And it was a beautiful
I'll
day.
stay outside if I have to.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day. I can't even remember what month it was, but the sun was out. So I'm walking down those stairs, and I didn't bring my ski poles because it had a railing.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked down those stairs, and it took me 45 minutes probably, maybe even an hour, because I would rest when I get on a stair. I got out to the door. I got to the door, and I was so weak. The only thing I could do was walk 3 steps to get off of the driveway, and I fell onto the grass. And I rolled over, and I was just crying because I was so happy.
Yeah.
Because I felt the sun on me. And I laid there until I got enough strength to sit up. And then I sat up, and I just was like, you know, I can't believe this is where my life is. This is Rick Coyne that I can't even walk up a set of stairs. I can't even sit up. I can't tell you how long I was out there.
Right, and it's amazing how we do that to ourselves, and
Yeah.
we almost get ungrateful, because really, the fact that you were even here to begin with
Yeah.
was huge. And
Yeah,
that
and
you had this life
Yeah.
to even do that, right?
Yeah, and you know, you're looking, at least for me, I was so happy to be outside, and then once I got that, and there's a big maple tree right where I was sitting. I wasn't quite under it. The sun was hitting me, and there were birds in there, and it was just beautiful to me. But you know, as I started sitting up and started thinking, and you know, I got over my crying, and I said, you know, you got to be happy that you made your goal. You're outside, right? So I did that, but then again, I like Raylene knows, I look back and I'm saying to myself, I can't believe this is where I am in my life. It's been well over a year, you know, and I'm Rick Coyne, and I told those people I'd be, you know, all better in a year. And I am so far from where I want to be. So the next thing I had to do was, and the landlord came out, and she was old. She was probably in her 70s. And she started crying when she saw me sitting out there. And she said, "What are you doing out here?" And I told her, you know, because I looked horrible, you know, head's all swelled up. And I said, I had to get outside. I had to get outside. She said, "Do you think you can get back?" I said, "I'll get back one way or another." So it took me, I bet it took me 2 hours to crawl up the stairs. So that was a major, major thing for me. And so my life started progressing. I couldn't do that again. I had to wait another 3 or 4 days. And then I started telling myself I got to walk back and forth in the apartment so many times, get more strength. And then I think it was a week and a half, 2 weeks later, I tried it again, made it down the stairs easier. But I got down there, I sat out there, and the same thing. I just had a rough time coming back up the stairs. So that all slowly progressed until I could walk down the stairs and up the stairs without, you know, without any problems. And that took, I don't know how long that took me. So my next goal was there was a steep hill where this apartment was on. It was in downtown Barrie. And there was a hill that I wanted to get to the top of. And the hill was probably 1/8 of a mile long, but it's real steep. So I said, well, I'm going to go out. I'm going to try to walk down the driveway. Then now I got my ski poles. I'm able to walk down the stairs holding the railing with my ski poles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get down there. I'm going to stand on the lawn. I'm going to get, you know, my ski poles ready, see how I feel. I'm going to walk down to the bottom of the driveway, which is fairly, not real steep, but it's a little ways. And I'm going to see how I feel. Well, I do that, and I am exhausted. And I got to turn around. I turn around. I said, I got to sit down. I can't make it up the driveway. So I got to stop, turn around, sit down, wait a while, get my strength back. Then I got to walk up the driveway, which just about killed me.
Yeah.
Then I have to sit down in the grass and wait until I can get strength enough to walk back up into the apartment. And I was cooked for a week after that. And the whole time I'm thinking in my head, you know, this isn't, and mentally I was nowhere near the person that you see now. I was just surviving. I can't explain it. Just enough in your head to survive, right? And to make small goals and to keep working towards something. You have to get better. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to find, and I had it, Raylene has it. Not everybody has it. I can tell you that from the brain injury clinic, that there were people in there were nowhere near as bad as I was, and they never came out. And some of them passed away because they gave up. You know, so I found out a lot about myself, about who I was, and how much mental strength that I had. And I still have a lot of mental strength, even though my body can't do what it used to do. I know mentally I could push my body until it's either dead or, you know, because Raylene knows what I'm talking about. Because your mind is what holds your body back. It's not your body, it's the other way around. Especially you learn that doing long climbs, you know, when you're mountaineering. You know, you learn that your body can do way more than your mind wants to let it, you know.
You just have to convince yourself.
Yeah, you have to convince yourself.
For sure. Yeah.
So I eventually got to the point where I could get down the driveway, back up. You know, this has taken, I don't know how many months. And then I said, well, now I'll go out the driveway, which is flat, and I'll get to the bottom of that hill, which made it longer. So I kept doing that, kept doing that, got stronger, and then now I said, well, today I'm going to try to get up this hill. I didn't make it 5 steps up that hill, and I went down. I was just totally exhausted. So meanwhile, I have all this stuff in my head. I have brackets and all kinds of screws and, you know, and all that just killing me. It just hurts all the time. Mm-hmm. So I stopped my my seizure medicine, and I kept my, now I was down to a half a Percocet a day. And as Raylene can tell you, we can live with a lot of pain. And I could sleep. You know, if I could sleep, that was the main thing. And I just needed that half a Percocet to get me started sleeping, you know. But you get so exhausted, you're going to sleep anyways. And so that went on for a long time, and I kept working my way up the hill, stopping, working my way up the hill, and I finally get to the top of that hill. And then there was another turn right, and I wanted to get to the end of the road where it comes out, not quite on Camp Street, but I forgot where it come out. But it came out on a road to get to Camp Street. So I did that. I practiced that, work on that, work on that. And Jimmy Wilmot didn't live far from there, and he saw me one day. He said, I can't believe you're walking. I can't believe you're out here. And I didn't start to really gain weight. I might have gained 4 or 5 pounds at the most, but I was trying to eat better.
You were gaining muscle.
Yeah, I wasn't gaining any muscle, but, you know, I was trying to eat better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that went on for a long time, and then I got stronger, and then I could walk further. But meanwhile, my head was killing me, and then I had to get back to work because I was, you know, I was out on disability, which the union was, I got a big thanks for the union for doing that for me. And my boss now, who was a really good friend of mine, Craig Rexford, helped me out a lot when I got back to work. You know, I had people that helped me once I got back to work. But I tried to go back and weld with all this stuff on me because I didn't know who I was really. But once I got stronger, I mean, mentally, I still wasn't sharp at all. But I went to practice at the Union Hall welding, you know, to see if I could weld. And I had to put that helmet on my head with all this stuff and no hair, and, you know, my hair wasn't growing back. It was taking its time, and I got all these bolts and nuts in there, and boy, that hurt, putting that welding helmet on. And I tried to do welding pipe, and normally what I could do in an hour and a half, it took me 5 or 6 hours. So they knew I couldn't weld.
Yeah.
Plus I have one eye, my depth perception was gone. And Lance Moran couldn't believe that I even got the thing done. And he said, well, you know, we got to find something better for you to do. So they gave me another line of work. So the best thing that happened to me, you know, you have these things in your life where they change your whole path in life. And this, in a roundabout way, was a blessing for me because it changed my whole career and my whole path in life. And I wouldn't have traveled the world. I wouldn't have, you know, done a lot of the things that I have done in my life since then if I hadn't got hit in the head, you know, because it changed my whole path in life. So I got back to work, and I had to work at IBM at the time, and they gave me, I was working on PVDF, which is an easy thing to do for our industry. But I had to go through the clean room in IBM. This is a pretty tough story for me to tell. So when you go into the clean room, everybody looks the same. They're all dressed in the white gowns. So all you see is people's eyes. Everybody's in white. And this gave me another kind of humbling and a good outlook on life. That it's interesting when we all are in white, you can't tell who's who,
Right.
or who's fat, or who's ugly, or, you know, who has money, who doesn't have money. Everybody looks the same. But, you know, you can hear people and you can kind of tell who they are. And there's thousands of people in there at that time. I forget how many thousands of people. So us as workers, we were in there. And you have to carry an identification photo of you. And I had never seen myself since my accident, really saw myself. And I remember that I had to get down on the floor to do some work underneath the floor. And when I bent down, my badge came out and laid flat on the floor. And I looked at myself for the first time, and I just started crying because I didn't look anything like the person I did before. I was shocked that that was me because my mind was starting to come back. I was more like you're in a fog, in a dream, like in a dream where you're in this fog and you can't quite get to where you want to go. You can't quite figure out who that person is, or, you know, what am I supposed to be doing? You know, you have that foggy, and you're in that dream, you're living that dream. And that's what my life was like for, I would say, another 2 years, because I hadn't even had my second operation yet. And but that was a shock to me to see how I looked. And then I started thinking, you know, as I got older, I started thinking about those days, you know, in the clean room, and how, and it comes back to people. You know, in reality, we're all inside here. It's not this. You know, and when you see people all dressed the same and you can only see their eyes, you realize that we're all the same. We don't all think the same. There's bad people, good people. But, you know, I would say, and I've traveled a lot through the world and I have many friends throughout the world, and I would say maybe 3/4 or a little less than 3/4 of the people that I've met are good people, you know. And but that experience for me changed my whole outlook on. I had to go back and think, because I was shocked. You know, I just didn't look like the same person, and I only weighed maybe 145 pounds, and I was still trying to get through this life, and that's the key. I mean, the key is that you're working forward, you're looking forward, you know.
At this point, are you still also in the angry stage?
Yes.
I mean,
not all the time, but some of the time.
I believe you go through even phases where it's hard to be empathetic, sympathetic, all of those things, because you're thinking, you know, when you hear people complain, it's not that you don't feel for them, but sometimes it's hard to hear people complain because you know what you go through every day, and you're thinking, listen here, you know, asshole, you have no idea. And in the internal frustration with that sometimes can set you back too. Whether you realize it or not, it really does.
Oh yeah, I was so mad that I couldn't do the work that I could normally do, you know, in 5 minutes, or think. You know, the part of it for me too was the thinking. I used to be able to do math in my head, and, you know, do all my takeoffs and put stuff together, and you know, I got to give the union credit. People like Craig Rexford, and, you know, these guys like Joe Siemens and Gary Coyne, and Cliff McCaskill, Brian McCaskill's dad, Brian McCaskill is probably one of my greatest friends ever. You know, they all helped me. And a lot of them did my work. You know, I got to be honest, because I wasn't capable, you know. And they did that. They all had, and they're not those type of guys that are huggy type of guys, or,
Right.
you know, but they have some type of compassion to, you know, to help me and to, you know, to work with me to try to get me to get better, you know. And that those guys, you know, when I look back on it, they were kind, you know. Some of them were real funny, you know. There was a lot of funny things, and you know, I don't think there was one of them. Maybe I'm wrong, but whoever they put me with, there wasn't one of them that would say, no, I'm not working with him.
Right.
I'm going to try to help this guy. And, you know, to have that in your life is pretty amazing.
It's huge.
Yeah.
For sure. Because, like what I was just talking about, I think the biggest challenge of healing is the mental part of it. It is getting over yourself.
Yeah, you got to get over yourself.
You have to get over yourself, and that takes a lot. It's almost as more than the physical part.
Yeah, that took me a good 10 years to finally, and you have to do that by being alone. You have to realize who you are, and you have to struggle in life alone. And that, I would say that, you know, that took me at least 10 years to get to where I am now, to know that, you know, I have a strong sense of who I am and you know, am myself, and I know I have a beautiful heart, you know, and I know that I'm a good person. And, you know, it's, as people, you know, we are very hard on ourselves. And, you know, for, like, if somebody was to, if you ask somebody, well, who do you think I am? And then somebody tells you that, I think you would be shocked. Because you're so hard on yourself, right? And you don't see yourself in that way, right? And, you know, so I've learned to do that and to look here for myself. You know, it has nothing to do, because now I'm old, you know, I'm out of shape. And
the approval of everybody else is no longer
doesn't matter
needed.
to me
doesn't
anymore.
matter.
It doesn't matter.
We were joking about it before the start of the show about, like, Jeff and I arguing.
Oh yeah,
that's
or whatever. Hilarious.
But we don't. And,
yeah.
And I don't know that I don't care to argue with anybody, because what is the point? I will speak my mind always, but to have a full-on argument or confrontation, it's just not worth it. It's like, it seems like a waste of time at this point.
It does. I mean, I that's the part of me that I hate the most, is I do get frustrated. You know, everybody gets frustrated. And I have a bit of a, you know, I had a very vicious temper. That's why I was fighting all the time. That's why I took up boxing. And I still have a part of that in me that I don't like, you know. And if somebody was to see that real part of me, they would be shocked. To know that I could be that person, you know, that could, I mean, like I always tell people, I mean, you don't realize it, but, you know, if somebody came at me to fight me, you know, trying to hit me, you know, you would either have to knock me out or kill me. Even at this age, if that temper got going, you would either have to knock me out or kill me. To get me to stop fighting back. So, and I think that's part of that thing that
was determination. It's
that brought
determination
that's
that I'm
brought
going to
me
survive.
through. Yeah, same with you. The same determination. Yeah,
you have to. Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, to get to that point where I was working, and then they ended up putting me in a PVDF fab shop. Which was the best job for me. I just run these. It's a plastic pipe. It's a special plastic pipe. It's made for DI water, and it's very expensive. And it's as white as this, almost as white as that. And these machines put it together, and it's light. It's not heavy, you know. And you have to learn how to run the machine And that's what I did for 2 years in that shop. They found the perfect job for me. And so I did that, and I eventually became the foreman that ran that shop. But through all of this, that was the best part of the next probably 3 years was I was able to do that, but I had to have another operation. And through this whole time of me recovering, they're after me to come back to the hospital, and I just didn't want to go back. I didn't want to see the doctors. I just spent so much time and agony and pain, so I finally had to go back. And I was having pain that I couldn't handle anymore. And I went back, and the Dr. Lobb says to me, I talked with the neurosurgeon. We've been talking about you for the past 5 months. And they thought 6 months prior to that I would be back trying to get the pain out of my head. Well, I came back, and and they said, wow, you put on some weight. Wow, you look good. They couldn't believe how I looked. And they said, wow, you're looking good. And I said, well, I got this pain. They said, well, we've been after, we thought you would have come in 6-7 months ago. And, you came in, and they said, well, you're going to have another major operation. It's going to take a minimum of 9 to 14 hours. So they gave me that news, and then they sent me in. This is kind of a funny story. And of course, they knew I had great insurance. So I had to go in an MRI, and I spent, the first session was 2.5 hours in that MRI. Not the MRI, it's the MRI, the big machine. And then the second one was 6 hours. They kept me in there for 6 hours, and they took all these dimensions of my head. This is before my second operation. And then, so I was waiting for 3 weeks, and during that time, the neurosurgeon called me in, and he wanted to talk to me and figure out where I was. And so he gave me these tests, and, do this with your hand, put pressure here, look over there, all this. I mean, it was bull crap to me, but he gave me these tests, and then he says, well, how are you doing on your seizure medicine? And I told him, I said, I stopped taking that a year ago. I threw it out. And his face he said, what? I said, yeah. I said, it had a lot of side effects. No, that doesn't have any side effects. And then I looked right at him, and I said, how would you know? You never took it, have you?
Yeah.
And he said, no, I never took it. I said, well, don't tell me what it has and what it doesn't have. Right. And I said,
I was taking it.
and I'm not taking it again. And he was really upset. Yeah. So
But you hadn't had seizures.
No, I didn't have any seizures.
Exactly.
So then they bring me in for a consultation. And this was like a total shock to me. They went through all these tests, the MRI, all that stuff. So they bring me in, and they have this Kevlar. They have a model of my skull, and it's made out of Kevlar. And the one that they wanted to put in my head is made out of something different. But this was a model of it. And they're trying to talk me into cutting all that stuff out. And they said, you're going to look normal. We can straighten your eye out. And they're trying to talk me into putting this thing in my head. And I'm looking at it. And, I'm still not right mentally. Right. And I'm thinking, like, what? They said, yeah, this will be much easier for us to deal with when we open you up, and we can put this in. And, it's a new type of thing. And they had already done a brand new operation on me that had never been done before. And I said, well, what are the side effects? Of course, I'm always thinking about, well, he says, you could get rejected. I said, what? It could reject you. It might not want to stay in there. And I said, well.
Then what? Yeah.
Well, and this is what I said to him, because I still had a sense of humor. I said, well, what do you do then? Pick the rest of the stuff out of the basket and try to put it back in my head? Or? And he said, well, no, that's a problem. I said, well, I'm not doing that. I said, I'm not. And they kept trying to talk me into it. And I said, no.
Right. You're not an experiment.
No, I don't want to do that. I don't care how good it makes me look, right? So then they brought me in for the operation. The operation took 19 hours. So they have to go in, they had to cut my head all the way off. They take the whole top of my, all the skin off the top of my head. And they took all the bolts and brackets out, and then they took my blood. They had drawn blood before. I think it was one day before. They drew a bunch of blood out of me, 2 pints of blood. And then they took that blood, and this is not an experiment, but this is how they tried to replace bone. So there is no replacement for bone. It's very difficult to replace bone. But this is the best thing that they had at the time. So they had coral from the ocean. They have a certain type of coral that they use, and they grind that all up, and they mix that with your enzymes, and they make a putty out of that, just like Bondo. And they slap that Bondo on there, and they try to smooth it out, and this is what you get. This is the first major operation that I had. So you talk about being set back. I can't even explain to you how bad that was for me to go through that second operation. I had to start all over again. I missed, I don't know, I think at least 11 months of work. Had to come back and recover. And then when I almost got back, I woke up in the morning and I had a swelling on my head. I looked in the mirror, I'm going, what is that? Boy, that doesn't look right. You know, I could use more brains, but I don't know if I could use another big bump on my head. So I had a big bump on my head. It was probably like this. It was sticking out of my head like that. So Dr. Laub, who became a good friend of mine, he was one of the major surgeons. He gave me his personal phone number. And he said, if you have any problems at all that you think are, serious, you call my personal phone number. So I called his personal phone number, and he said, well, you got to get right up to the hospital. He said, I got to see you right now, within the hour or two. So I drove myself up there to the hospital. And then he came down and got me. They took me right in, and that was it. They cut my head open again because I had an infection. And that infection would have eventually killed me. So that was a 9-hour operation. So that set me back even further. And I got over those 2 operations, started coming back, trying to get stronger, and again, I'm in the abyss. You have to go through the whole process again.
All over.
Yeah,
Yep.
start all over. It wasn't as bad as the first time because I had some strength, but my head was, I would say my head almost twice the size. After the reconstruction surgery, my head was huge. And then after this surgery, the same thing, it was big. And of course they shave you, so I look like a lopsided basketball, I guess would be the best way to explain it, And you have to deal with all that, and you have to worry about infection, and they got me on antibiotics, and and then I have to.
And in the meantime, keep reminding yourself of the white suit. We're all the same.
Yeah, we're all the same, and we have to. You have to keep going forward. You have to keep. It's like me now. I'll be 70 next year. And I can't explain to people how I feel about life because I'm very excited to be alive. There's many things I still want to do in my life. I have a lot of things that I would like to do, and I love living life. And, I would say 3/4, a little less than 3/4 of my life has been amazing. It's this 1/4 or a little over 1/4 has been a huge, I don't know how to explain it. Not a chore, but I had to get over so much And I'm so happy to be alive, to have the people in my life that mean something to me. And, you know, to love animals, to love nature. And those are the keys to life, is to have a calm mind and a kind heart. You know, if you can have a peaceful mind in your life and a kind heart, a peaceful mind is key to a lot of things, because we're always racing in our mind. We're always wondering if we're good enough. We want to have what that guy has. And jealousy and all that stuff, those are all emotions. All our emotions cause us most of the problems that we have in our life. And I've learned this the hard way. And, you know, I've learned to become a kind person and a good person, and to love myself. And it took all of these things, all of these hard things in my life to make me realize, you know, that that's what life is about. And you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do, and even here, like, I face it sometimes where there's, because I am outspoken, there
Yeah.
are people that, you know, think that I'm not a very kind person, or they have opinions.
Well, that's
of
because
me.
they don't know you.
Right, they have exactly. They don't know me. They have opinions of me, whatever.
Mhm.
So I just have to remind myself that it does, what they think doesn't matter.
That's
to me.
right.
It's only what I think, and the rest of it doesn't matter.
And they
the
have
people
no-
that know.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters.
And,
too.
you know,
Those are my people, right?
I
We
try
all
to
have our people.
think in my mind the people that are toxic to me, or people I don't want to be around, and sometimes I have to be around them because you have to, because of work or whatever.
Right. Yep.
You have to realize that they don't validate your life, and they don't validate who you are. And they are small time in your lifetime.
Right.
So you have to try to let those things go. And we all have trouble doing it. I do sometimes, you know, because pride, especially in men, pride is a big thing. You know, you have to be strong. You have to be proud. You know, you're not allowed to cry. At least that's the way him and I were brought up. You know, I was never allowed to cry. You know, you're a baby. You know, you don't cry. You know, you're going to be in trouble until you stop crying.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
You know.
I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, every human being has to live through their emotions, and we all have emotions. And every human being on this planet has insecurities. And that's what we fight with our whole lives. And when you get to a point like you and I have, yeah, I still have insecurities, but they don't mean as much to me anymore.
Right.
And
They don't rent as much space in your head or
they
your
don't.
heart anymore.
And I'm constantly working on letting them go. You know.
Agree. So we only have a few minutes left, but I think this is a good place to stop, because
Okay.
now,
Yeah.
you know, if we go any further, we'll get into
Yeah,
another
there's
whole hour of
so
stuff.
much other
So,
stuff. Yeah.
the recovery of the second surgery,
Yeah.
and basically feeling that you're back where you started from,
Yeah.
but with maybe a different perspective that
Yeah,
you have
and
now, because you know that you can get there.
Right, and you can't say, you know, the other thing we do in our lives is, you know, I can honestly say this life doesn't owe any of us anything, you know, and we can say, why me? You know, and I can look back on a lot of things in my life saying, why is this happening to me? You know, I why does it always happen to me? Well, this is what life is, you know. This is how your path in life is going.
Right.
Everybody has a
and
different
everything
path.
happens for a reason.
That's right.
And so if it
Yeah.
happened, it happened to teach you a lesson.
That's
or
right.
teach others a lesson.
Yeah.
Or to show you how strong you were.
Yeah.
Because maybe you were thinking that you were weak at the moment.
Right.
And it taught you that no, you're not.
Right.
You can get back up and you
That's
can
right.
do it.
And another thing that I've learned is the people that we have trouble with are teachers for us. You know, we have to look at them that way. If somebody is really bothering you, you have to learn how to cope with that through patience and empathy, or, you know, you can't constantly spend time dwelling on people like that, because it takes time up in your life. You have to learn from them. Sometimes the worst person in your life can be the best teacher, because you need to learn from that. You don't need, you don't need to get angry. You don't need to, be all mad and dwell on that. You need to learn what that person is trying to teach you, whether it's patience or empathy.
Patience is a full-time
Patience
job.
is a big thing. Yeah.
That's a full-time job. That's what I
It
think.
is.
Having patience is
Yeah.
a full-time job. But yeah,
So
we'll leave it there
Okay.
until
when's our next one?
in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
So we'll see you
What's
back
that?
here
What
in
date
2
is
weeks.
that? I forget. 23rd?
Can you look at the calendar for May? I think so. But yeah, we'll be back
Well,
in 2
thanks,
weeks.
Raylene.
And thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Driving down this way, and we did get some news that the book is progressing along.
Yeah. It should be all written by the late fall, but it won't be out on the
go
market.
through all the process.
Yeah, it has to go through editing, publishing, and it won't be out on the market until the first quarter of 2027. So sometime after January.
2 weeks is the same day we're supposed to be at the senior center.
The 18th.
Yep.
Yep. So we'll do this instead.
So you'll
So-
do it on the 18th,
Yep, we'll do it on the 8th.
and you'll be able to do your other thing.
I'll just let them know that we can't do it.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, Raylene.
Yeah, we got to keep this going. Everybody's expecting that, that to see us every couple of weeks, and I know that you've already rearranged your schedule to have it there. Cindy says it will be worth it. Cindy LaCroix.
Oh, thank you, Cindy.
Yeah.
Cindy's a big reason why this book took place. I think I just already said that. but
Yeah.
She really encouraged me to do it just when I was getting ready to totally give up. So
Right.
thank you,
check out.
Cindy.
So we'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Until then, get out, enjoy the sunshine while we can. It looks like we might
Yes.
have some rain
Enjoy sunshine.
here or there this week, but enjoy the sunshine. Get out.
Is Tonight
kinds.
tonight the night out in the park.
Tonight is National Night Out in Career Park. Free food and meet the public servants, firemen, police. Go over and meet with them and enjoy some community events over there. Also at the Turning Point Center, we're going to do our final Open Hearts meeting on Air Street. Next week we'll be in the brand new building on South Main. I'm super excited about that. So tonight, Open Hearts at Air Street, 6 o'clock. Would love to see you there. If you are someone who loves, cares for, has had in your life somebody struggling with addiction, we all meet there to support each other and give each other hope and help and all of that good stuff. And city council meeting.
City
That's
council
where,
meeting at
Jeff
6.
will be. City council meeting also at 6 tonight. Always something going on. Concerts in the park tomorrow night, of course. Thunder Road on Thursday night, and Friday night right here on 802 Scoop at 5:30 will be Lori Shepard, and the girls will be here for a special episode of Four Quarters Fantasy Football. So take care. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you soon.